Hello, everyone. Got a few dirty jokes for you today.
So one day, while on patrol, a police officer pulled over a car for speeding. He went up to the car and asked the driver to roll down her window. The first thing he noticed, besides the nice red sports car, was how hot the driver was. Blue eyes, blonde, the works. "I've pulled you over for speeding, miss. Could I see your driver's license?" "What's a license?" replied the blonde, instantly giving away the fact that she was as dumb as a stump. "It's usually in your wallet," replied the officer. After fumbling for a few minutes, the driver managed to find it. "Now, may I see your registration?" asked the cop. "Registration? What's that?" asked the blonde. "It's usually in your glove compartment," said the cop impatiently. After some more fumbling, she found the registration. "I'll be back in a minute," said the cop and walked back to his car. The officer called in to the dispatch to run a check on the woman's license and registration. After a few moments, the dispatcher came back. Is this woman driving a red sports car?" "Yes," replied the officer. "Is she a drop-dead gorgeous blonde?" asked the dispatcher. Yes," replied the cop. "Here's what you do," said the dispatcher. "Give her the stuff back and drop your pants." "What? I can't do that." "It's inappropriate," exclaimed the cop. "Trust me. Just do it," said the dispatcher. A smile in his voice, so the cop goes back to the car, gives back the license and registration and drops his pants, just as the dispatcher said. The blonde looks down and sighs. "Oh no, not another breathalyzer." So two blondes are chatting when the first one says, "I make love to my husband 4 times a week." "You're lucky," her friend says. "I only get it once a week." The first replies, "Hang on, you're not even married." To which the reply comes, "Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about your husband." So a blonde goes into a store and sees a shiny object on the shelf. She asks the clerk, "What is that shiny object?" The clerk replies, "That is a thermos." The blonde then asks, "What does it do?" The clerk responds, "It keeps hot things hot and it keeps cold things cold." The blonde says, "Oh, I could use something like that. I'll take it." The next day, as she walks into work with her new thermos, she spots her boss and shows off her shiny new thermos. "I just got this yesterday. Isn't it wonderful? It's a thermos, and it keeps hot things hot and cold things cold." The boss asks, "So what do you have in it?" The blonde replies, "Some coffee and a popsicle." So, 3 blondes are in front of the heavenly gate. Each of the blondes lives a sinful and depraved life of lust and drugs. Yet, after their deaths, they find themselves before St. Peter. Peter looks at these 3 girls and shakes his head. Then, after a moment, he speaks. "Okay, ladies, the Lord has decided to be merciful and give you another chance. I'm going to ask each of you the same question. If you get the question right, God will let you into heaven. If you get it wrong, it is a hell you will be going." Peter then reminds the girls, "You will each be asked the same question. So, if the first girl gets it right, the other 2 will get it as well. So choose carefully as to who will answer the question first." The girls whisper amongst themselves, and the first blonde steps up. "I will answer first." Peter eyes her over and asks, "What is Easter?" The first blonde thinks about it and answers, "It's where everyone decorates their trees and gives each other presents." Saddened, Peter informs her, "I am sorry, but you are wrong." Suddenly, a big, fiery pit opens up below her, and swallows her up. The second blonde steps up. Peter asks the same question. What is Easter? The second blonde smiles and proudly announces, that is the day when everyone dresses in green, and if you do not, everyone pinches you. Peter looks at her, saddened. I'm sorry. The pit opens up and then swallows the second blonde. The third blonde steps up and smiles widely as Peter asks, what is Easter? The blonde proudly announces, that is the day when Jesus was betrayed to the Romans and crucified by Pontius Pilate. When they took him off the cross, they placed him in a large tomb and sealed it shut with a large stone. Peter was surprised. That is very close. What you described is Good Friday. What comes next? The blonde continues. Well, the next day they move the rock away, and when Jesus comes out, if he sees his shadow, there are 6 more weeks of winter. So a blonde lived with 2 blonde roommates. She bought a new car, and on the way home from the dealer got caught in a terrible hailstorm. Her brand new car was dented all over. When she got home, she called the service department to ask what she should do. They offered to send the car to a mechanic, but she'd have to pay for it. She tells them she has absolutely no money. Couldn't they just send someone anyway? The service chief, being a prankster, told her to wait till the car was cool and then blow hard on the tailpipe, which would pop out all the dents. A half hour later, her roomies saw her on her knees behind the car, blowing as hard as she could. They asked what the heck she was doing, and she told them, adding in a perplexed tone, "But it's not working." "You dummy," one of her blonde roommates said. "You have to roll up the windows first." So, the fattest blonde in the world decided to ask the doctor for help losing weight. Eager to assist, the doctor devised a unique diet plan for the blonde to follow. "Here's what I want you to do," the doctor began, wearing a determined expression. "For the next 2 weeks, I want you to eat regularly for 2 days and then skip a day. Repeat this pattern diligently, and when you come back to see me, I guarantee you'll have shed at least 5 pounds. Excited to embark on her weight loss journey, the blonde adhered to the doctor's instructions with unwavering determination. She meticulously followed the prescribed eating and skipping routine, eagerly anticipating the outcome. Finally, the day arrived for the blonde's follow-up appointment. As she entered the doctor's office, the scale ready to deliver the verdict, the doctor's eyes widened in astonishment. The blonde had not only met the expected weight loss goal, but surpassed it by a considerable margin, having shed nearly 20 pounds. "Goodness gracious, this is absolutely amazing," exclaimed the doctor, barely containing his excitement. "Did you faithfully follow my instructions?" Proudly, the blonde nodded her head, a triumphant smile adorning her face. However, before the doctor could further praise her dedication and self-control, the blonde interjected with a playful twinkle in her eyes. "But I must admit," she confessed mischievously, "I thought I was going to drop dead on that 3rd day." Concern etched on his face. The doctor quickly inquired, "Oh my, were you feeling incredibly hungry?" The blonde shook her head. No, not from hunger," she clarified, her voice brimming with mirth. "I thought I might just drop dead from skipping everywhere I went." So a woman hired a contractor to repaint the interior of her house. The woman walked the man through the 2nd floor of her home and told him what colors she wanted for each room. As they walked through the first room, the woman said, "I think I would like this room in a cream color." The contractor wrote on his clipboard, walked to the window, opened it, and yelled out, "Green side up." He then closed the window and continued following the woman to the next room. The woman looked confused, but proceeded with her tour. In this room, I was thinking of an off blue. Again, the contractor wrote this down, went to the window, opened it, and yelled out, "Green side up." This baffled the woman, but she was hesitant to say anything. In the next room, the woman said she would like it painted in a light rose color. And once more, the contractor opened the window and yelled, "Green side up." Struck with curiosity, the woman mustered up the nerve to ask, "Why do you keep yelling green side up out of my window each time I tell you what color I'd like a room?" The contractor replied, "Because I have a crew of blondes laying turf across the street." So a blonde has been hiding that she likes girls from her parents for years. She has always been scared that they wouldn't accept her like many other parents do. She was speaking about it to her best friend, who is familiar with her parents. Her friend said, "Are you serious? I thought they knew already. Why wouldn't they accept you? Just tell them today." The blonde was nervous but decided to take her friend's advice. During dinner that evening, she began to open herself to her parents. "I have something to say to you two. I liked girls for years now, and I've been hiding it from the two of you. Please accept me," she began. Her parents looked at each other in bewilderment. "Why do you think we won't accept you?" her mom said. "Yeah, are you dumb?" said her other mom. So Michael, a handsome man, walked into a sports bar around 9:58 p.m. He sat down next to this blonde at the bar and stared up at the TV as the 10:00 p.m. news came on. The news crew was covering a story of a man on a ledge of a large building preparing to jump. Michael says, "You know what? I bet he will." The blonde replied, "Well, I bet he won't." Michael placed $30 on the bar and said, "You're on." Just as the blonde placed her money on the bar, the guy did a swan dive off of the building, falling down. The blonde was very upset and handed her $30 to Michael, saying, "Fair's fair." "Here's your money." Michael replied, "I can't take your money. I saw this earlier on the 5 o'clock news and knew he would jump." The blonde replies, "I did too, but I didn't think he'd do it again." Michael took the money. So a blonde enters a barber shop and the barber whispers to his customer, "This is the dumbest blonde in the world. Watch while I prove it to you." The barber puts a dollar bill in one hand and 2 quarters in the other, then calls the blonde over and asks, "Which do you want?" The blonde takes the quarters and leaves. "What did I tell you?" said the barber. That blonde never learns. Later, when the customer leaves, he sees the same blonde coming out of the ice cream parlor. "Hey there, may I ask you a question? Why did you take the quarters instead of the dollar bill?" The blonde licked her cone and replied, "Because the day I take the dollar, the game is over." So 2 blondes decided to go on a hunting trip to see what it's all about. After a few days camping, they finally bagged a deer and were dragging it by the rear legs back to the truck. But the antlers kept getting stuck in the mud. One says to the other, "This is tough, but we only got about a mile left to reach the truck." Another hunter happened upon them then, saw their dilemma, and told them, "If you drag the deer the other way, the antlers won't stick in the mud." So the blondes give it a try and it worked. The first blonde says, "That hunter was right. This way is a lot easier." The second blonde says, "Sure was, but now we're 2 miles from the truck." So a blonde woman dials 911 to report that her car has been broken into. She is hysterical as she explains her situation to the dispatcher. "They've stolen the dashboard, the steering wheel, the brake pedal, and even the accelerator. She cries. The 911 dispatcher says, "Stay calm. An officer is on the way. He will be there in 2 minutes." Before the police get to the crime scene, however, the 911 dispatcher's telephone rings a second time, and the same blonde is on the line again. "Never mind," giggles the blonde. "I got in the back seat by mistake." So a brunette, redhead, and blonde went to a fitness spa for some fun and relaxation. After a stimulating, healthy lunch, all three decided to visit the ladies' room and found a strange-looking woman sitting at the entrance who said, "Welcome to the ladies' room. Be sure to check out our newest feature, a mirror which, if you look into it and say something truthful, you will be awarded with a wish. But be warned, for if you say something false, you will be sucked into the mirror to live in a void of nothingness for all eternity." The three women quickly entered, and upon finding the mirror, the brunette said, "I think I am the most beautiful of us three." And in an instant, she was surrounded by a pile of money. The redhead stepped up and said, "I think I'm the most talented of us three." And she suddenly found the keys to a brand new Lexus in her hands. Excited over the possibility of having a wish come true, the blonde looked into the mirror and said, "I think," and was promptly sucked into the mirror. So a blonde was traveling abroad and wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. She tried to ask people and found a policeman who agreed to help her. She asked him, "Sorry, how do I get from here to the Eiffel Tower?" The policeman replied, "Wait for bus 37 and get on it. It'll take you there in 10 minutes." The blonde thanked the policeman and he left. Hours later, he happened to go by the same place he left the woman just to see the blonde is still there. "Why are you still here?" the policeman asked. "I left you 4 hours ago and you haven't boarded the bus." "Oh, don't worry, Mr. Policeman, sir. Just a moment ago, the 30th bus passed. There are only 7 left to go." So a young blonde woman gets a job as the physical education teacher at a school. On the first day, she has the kids outside playing in a field. After a little while, she notices one young boy standing all by himself while all the others are running around together. She walks over to the boy and asks, "Is everything okay with you?" The boy says, "Yeah, I'm doing just fine." Taking pity on him, the blonde says, "You know you can run around with the other children too, right?" Shrugging, the boy tells her, "I think it's best if I just stay right here." The blonde asks, "And why would you say that, sweetheart?" The boy says, "Because I'm the goalkeeper." So one day, President Bush was looking for a call girl. He found 3 such girls in a local lounge, a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. To the blonde, he said, "I am the President of the United States. Now, how much would it cost me to spend some time with you?" She replied, $200. To the brunette, he asked the same question. Her reply was $100. He then asked the redhead. Her reply was, "Mr. President, if you can get my skirt up as high as my taxes, my panties as low as my wages, get that thing of yours as hard as the times, and keep it rising like the gas prices, keep me warmer than it is in my apartment, and screw me the way you do the public, then believe me, Mr. President, it isn't going to cost you a damn cent." So a blonde lady failed the written driving test 4 times. At the 5th attempt, she was determined to pass. But the test had the same question. You are driving at 100 miles per hour. On your right, is a wall. On your left is a cliff. On the road you see an old man and a young man. What will you hit? The woman walked up to the examiner and said, I've answered this question all 4 ways. Wall, cliffs, old man, and young man. Yet I failed all 4 times. How is this possible? What am I supposed to hit? The examiner replied, the brakes. So a blonde woman was speeding down the road in her little red sports car and was pulled over by a woman police officer who was also a blonde. The blonde cop asked to see the blonde driver's license. She dug through her purse and was getting progressively more agitated. What does it look like? She finally asked. The policewoman replied, it's square and it has your picture on it. The driver finally found a square mirror in her purse, looked at it, and handed it to the policewoman. Here it is, she said. The blonde officer looked at the mirror, then handed it back, saying, okay, you can go. I didn't realize you were a cop. So a blonde girl in a broken-down car was waiting for a tow truck. When the tow truck arrived, the driver started preparing the car to be towed as the blonde girl got out of her car and watched intently on what the tow truck driver was doing. He looked up and saw the curiosity on the girl's face, so he asked, haven't you ever been towed before? The girl thought for about 5 seconds and then answered, no, but I have been fingered a few times. So a farmer is giving his blonde wife last-minute instructions before heading to town to do chores. That fellow from the university will be along this afternoon to inseminate one of the cows. I've hung a nail by the right stall, so you'll know which one I want him to impregnate. Satisfied that his blonde wife understood the instructions, the farmer leaves for town. That afternoon, the inseminator arrives, and the wife dutifully takes him out to the barn and directly to the stall with the nail. This is the cow right here, she tells him. What's the nail for? The guy asks. The wife replies, I guess it's to hang up your pants. So 2 blondes in Oklahoma were sitting on a bench one evening, gazing at the moon. One blonde turns to the other and asks, which do you think is farther away, Florida or the moon? The other blonde rolls her eyes, looks at her friend and says, hello, can you see Florida from here? So passing an office building late one night, a blonde saw a sign that said, press bell for night watchman. She did so, and after several minutes, she heard the watchman clomping down the stairs. The uniformed man proceeded to unlock first one gate and then another, shut down the alarm system, and finally made his way through the revolving door. Well, he snarled at the blonde, what do you want? I just want to know why you can't ring the bell for yourself. So a blonde woman was traveling on a plane bound for Los Angeles. She had been assigned a coach seat, but feeling restless and cramped, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She confidently walked up the aisle and plopped down into an empty first-class seat. It didn't take long for an attendant to notice this bold move. With a polite but firm tone, the attendant approached her. Miss, you'll need to return to your seat in coach. The blonde, however, was not in the mood to comply. With a defiant shake of her head, she declared, no, I am staying right here. The attendant, seeing no resolution in sight, called over the security guard. The blonde repeated her stance, refusing to budge. The situation escalated, leading to the involvement of the pilot. When the pilot arrived, he offered a knowing smile. My wife is a blonde. Let me handle this. He leaned in close to the blonde, whispering something into her ear. To everyone's surprise, she stood up, gathered her belongings, and without a word, returned to her coach seat. Curiosity piqued. The attendant later approached the pilot, asking, "What did you say to her?" The pilot chuckled before revealing his clever ruse. "I told her first class was going to Toronto." So, Sally, a blonde, goes on her first camping trip. Her husband, who was a scout leader, was sick, so she volunteered to take over for him for the weekend. She got everyone together and assigned different duties to each scout. Gabby was responsible for the food supplies. Mike would be the cook this trip. Johnny was responsible for their maps and making up a time schedule. Tim was to decide on their events and to fit them into Johnny's schedule, and Sally would test all their equipment before setting out. They arrived at Big Moose Mountain, and everyone was excited. They arrived right on schedule and were getting ready for their first event, hiking up the mountain. But first, they wanted to get something to eat. So Sally asked Mike if he would prepare the meal, and, of course, Mike said he would. About 10 minutes later, he came back and told Sally, "I can't make the supper. I can't light a fire with the matches you brought." Sally replied, "I can't understand that. Those matches should be perfectly fine. I tested them all just before we left." So a blonde woman was playing golf with her friend and was about to tee off. She swung her club, sending the ball soaring through the air, only for it to hit a man on the other side of the course. The man waved his hand in the air, up and down, then started sucking on his thumb. Suddenly, he grabbed his crotch, fell to the ground, and doubled over in pain. The blonde rushed over to check on him. Seeing where his hands were, she immediately apologized and said she knew a way to ease the pain. She unbuttoned his shorts, slid her hand down, and gently massaged his genitals. After a while, she asked, "Does that feel good?" To which the man replied, "Yes, but my thumb still hurts like hell." So a man entered the bus with both of his front pockets full of golf balls and sat down next to a beautiful blonde. The puzzled blonde kept looking at him and his bulging pockets. Finally, after many such glances from her, he said, "It's golf balls." Nevertheless, the blonde continued to look at him for a very long time, deeply thinking about what he had said. After several minutes, not being able to contain her curiosity any longer, asked, "Does it hurt as much as tennis elbow?" So an executive was interviewing a young blonde for a position at his company. Wanting to get a sense of her personality, he asked, "If you could have a conversation with anyone, living or dead, who would it be?" Without missing a beat, the blonde replied, "The living one." So a brunette, a redhead, and a blonde escape a burning building by climbing to the roof. Firemen are standing below, holding a blanket to catch them. The firemen shout to the brunette, "Jump! It's your only chance to survive." The brunette jumps, and swish. The firemen yank the blanket away, and she crashes into the sidewalk like a tomato. "Come on! You have to jump!" The firemen yell at the redhead. The redhead shakes her head and says, "Oh no, you're just going to pull the blanket away." "No, we don't pull it away from redheads," the firemen assure her. "Okay," says the redhead, and she jumps. Swish. The firemen yank the blanket away again, and the redhead is flattened on the pavement like a pancake. Finally, the blonde steps to the edge of the roof. The firemen shout, "Jump! You have to jump." "No way. You're just going to pull the blanket away," yells the blonde. "No, we swear we won't pull it away," the firemen insist. The blonde looks at them and says, "Look, nothing you say will convince me that you're not going to pull the blanket away. So what I want you to do is put the blanket down and back away from it." So a blonde walks by a travel agency and notices a sign in the window, "Cruise Special, $99. She goes inside, lays her money on the counter and says, "I'd like the $99 cruise special, please." The agent grabs her, drags her into the back room, ties her to a large inner tube, then drags her out the back door and downhill to the river, where he pushes her in and sends her floating. A second blonde comes by a few minutes later, sees the sign, goes inside, lays her money on the counter, and asks for the $99 special. She too is tied to an inner tube and sent floating down the river. Drifting into stronger current, she eventually catches up with the first blonde. They float side by side for a while before the first blonde asks, "Do they serve refreshments on this cruise?" The second blonde replies, "They didn't last year." So a young blonde woman was fed up with the amount of stereotypical blonde jokes she kept hearing around the office. She decided to prove everyone wrong and went home one night to memorize the capital of every country on Earth. The next day in the office, she overheard some coworkers making more blonde jokes and decided to make her point. She told them, "You know, not all blondes are necessarily dumb. For example, I can tell you the capital of absolutely any country." Intrigued, her coworker asked, "All right then, what's the capital of Denmark?" The blonde said, "Easy, that one is a D."